A party of rookie adventurers enters a cave to slay goblins for a quest. Unaware of the danger they are facing, the party gets soon overwhelmed by the cunning creatures until only the young priestess is left standing. Surrounded by goblins and paralyzed by fear, the priestess sees a light in the distance. An ironclad figure approaches the goblins with heavy footsteps and with incredible composure brutally disposes of them. This is how the anime Goblin Slayer introduces us to its main character. From the very beginning, the Goblin Slayer hardly seems human. His monotone metallic voice, strictly utilitarian way of speaking and meticulously calculated fighting style make him seem more like a machine than a man. The only sign of emotion we get from Goblin Slayer is a glowing red eye that displays as his hate towards the goblins he kills. While our protagonist was still a child, his sister was violated and murdered by goblins in front of his eyes. The only thing he could do back then was cower and hide in fear. After losing his closest relative, he dedicates his life to vengeance and leaves his humanity behind to become a goblin-killing machine. After all, feelings, hopes and dreams are just a hindrance for someone who dedicates his life to revenge. Goblin Slayer lives only to execute one task: he lives to slay goblins. At surface level, Goblin Slayer may come across as a show with gratuitous violence and fan service, but just like its eponymous hero, there is something more to find behind its rough exterior. It is a story about losing humanity, but more importantly, about regaining it. The Goblin Slayer's armor can be taken as a metaphor for his loss of humanity. It covers every inch of his body, so we can't even get a glimpse at his actual appearance. It is also telling that he is the only character whose face is fully concealed, clearly setting him apart from the rest of the cast. In the first 7 episodes we never see Goblin Slayer without his armor and helmet, as he even wears them when he eats or does menial tasks. We do not get to see Goblin Slayer's face, but we do get some interesting point of view shots that make us see the world through his eyes. The visor of his helmet somewhat obstructs his vision and makes it seem like he's behind bars. His armor protects him, but it also imprisons him in a way. He's stuck in an infinite loop of slaying goblins day after day, but there is always more of them, no matter how many he kills. He cannot break free from the prison he has constructed for himself. His fixation on goblins and his cold exterior make the other adventurers mock him and mistrust him. It is implied that the only characters that ever see Goblin Slayer without his armor are the farm girl and her uncle, old acquaintances from his childhood. While most people perceive him as a far-gone, obsessed lunatic, the farm girl hasn't given up on his humanity yet. She is always waiting for him to come back, both literally and figuratively. Fortunately for her, Goblin Slayer does manage to change in the course of the season. Starting with his encounter with the priestess, he gradually engages more with the other adventurers as well. When the two of them join a party, Goblin Slayer slowly bonds with them and starts to trust his new companions. He even changes his fighting style to accommodate their wishes. Whereas before he used fire and other destructive tactics without regard for his surroundings, he starts relying on his party members instead of taking everything upon himself. Thanks to their help, Goblin Slayer no longer has to bear his burden alone. He has found someone he can lean on, perhaps someone he can show his humanity to. The first time we see Goblin Slayer without his armor is in episode 8, when the priestess helps him heal after a gruesome battle. Just like in the beginning of the show, it is through her that we see Goblin Slayer, but this time we get to see his human side. As she was the first adventurer that joined him, it is fitting that she is the first one to see him without his armor. Later in the episode, he confesses to her that despite his stoic front, he still feels the same fear that he felt as a child, exposing his weakness to her, thus bringing down the physical and psychological barriers he has constructed to keep himself safe. Through his connection with the priestess and the other party members, Goblin Slayer's human side resurfaces again. In episode 10, he goes to town without his armor on, displaying his humanity in public for the first time. His thoughts slowly start straying away from his goblin-killing mental loop. He starts getting interested in trivial things like ice cream making and accepts quests that don't involve slaying goblins. He starts to think more about other people's feelings and also about his own. For the first time, we see him discussing his future, an uncertain, not well-defined future, but one where he can perhaps find a new goal to strive for. Goblin Slayer's journey to rediscover his humanity culminates in the last 2 episodes of the season. As a horde of goblins threatens to destroy the town, he asks the other adventurers for help. By sharing his burden with them, he displays his newfound trust in others and manages to persuade the adventurers. They place their trust in him, just as he placed his trust in them, and through their combined efforts, they manage to neutralize the threat. After the battle with the goblin horde, the adventurers gather in the town's tavern to celebrate their victory. During the celebration, Goblin Slayer talks with the farm girl and shares his thoughts on the future.
まだ結論は出ていないんだが、少しまとまってきた。俺は多分冒険者になりたいのだと思う。
そっか。
By looking towards the future, Goblin Slayer has freed himself from the endless loop he was stuck in. While killing goblins is important, he realizes that there is more to life, that indulging in feelings and dreams is what makes us human, even if it can make us vulnerable. Finally, on the priestess's request, Goblin Slayer takes off his helmet and shows his face to all the adventurers in the tavern. He still needs his impenetrable armor to fight goblins, but perhaps it is okay to take it off sometimes, to unburden himself of his duty, to stop being Goblin Slayer and just be human for a while.